for a long time about how do we become catalysts for TiE members, benefiting from interaction with each other, but in a business way as well, not only from sharing experiences, but how could they do business together? And this is one event which could be titled When Bala Met Raj. It was at a TiE event that Bala met Raj, and they ended up doing business together, with Bala becoming part of Orion Inc. You'll hear more about it from Bala and Raj. But I really would like it if we could give some thought to that individually, all of us who are members of TiE, to see how could we make this the norm and not the exception. Point to this as something exceptional that happened once. How could we make it the norm? So give that some thought. And let us have your thoughts on how we can do that, so that there'll be business for mutual benefit. Anjan will introduce the speakers for the event and the event itself. You all know Anjan because he's chair of our CEO Tech SIG, and he, as you know, brings great experience as co-founder of is it Mindtree? Is that right? Yeah, Mindtree. And then CEO of BirlaSoft. And in the tech world, all of these accomplishments are all engraved on the wall. So, you'll hear from Anjan. He will introduce the guests. And meanwhile, I'll take the opportunity to introduce two charter members. When we had our in-person meetings, it was easy to meet people and get to know each other. But right now, it's become a little bit more challenging, although we're hoping in the second half of this year that will resume, that we can meet in person and have the pleasure. I look forward to the pleasure of doing that. So the two charter members we are going to introduce today in very brief 1-minute introductions. First is Mayur Sachdev. And Mayur, maybe you could just give your own introduction rather than me doing it in the interest of time.
Hi, everyone. Thank you, Roman. Hope everyone's doing well and everyone's staying safe during this pandemic. Hopefully everyone gets vaccinated soon. My name is Mayur Sachdev. I actually run Minos Labs. And we're focusing on entry-level talent delivery that screen, assess, and train for Fortune 1000 organizations within cybersecurity and full stack. And what we realized is we're looking to really bridge the gap between college recent graduates and those that are entering the workforce that want to work with full stack and cybersecurity. As we know that this space is growing heavily, there's a shortage across the kids. I believe the 2019 numbers for entry level between cybersecurity and full stack were about 500,000 vacancies, nearly 100,000. So we're looking to solve it and work on our mission by building a platform to help organizations get the right talent. Thank you, Roman.
Okay, well, thank you, Mayur. So pleasure to see you there with that backdrop, wonderful backdrop there.
Trying to keep it better when it's gloomy outside.
So, and the next charter member is Sridhar Chemaladin. Sridhar, I hope I pronounced that correctly. Yeah, so yes, over to you.
Right, Raman.
Over to you, yes, Sridhar.
Hi. Yes, hi. My name is Sridhar Chemaladin. I'm in Princeton area, and we have an IT services company, and we've been in this for the last 20 years, and I'm pretty much involved in this staffing services and also product development. So that's what we do. And again, so we are totally concentrating on new areas like security and cloud services.
So thank you, Sridhar, and it's a pleasure. So pleasure to connect with you. even during these times or reconnect with you. So
Yes.
look forward to connecting up in person very soon with everybody here. And with that, I turn it over to Anjan. Anjan, over to you.
Thank you very much. Welcome, everybody. We have about 65 people, on the call, which is fantastic. So I'm going to quickly go in deep. I'm not going to sort of take too much time in introductions because as we discuss, we will get into the details. But I want to, thank Raj for being here. Raj Patil is, when I talk to investors, when I talk to PEs, within the first 2-3 sentences, think, do you know what Raj Patil is doing? Do you know what is that? How he has turned the company around. So we have an unbelievable story that we wanted to sort of unpack today. And along with Raj, and I'll go straight in. We have Bala, and Bala, can you just raise your hand? So thanks, Bala. So Bala met with Raj at a TiE event a few years back, and then became a part of Orion. And then Guy. Guy, can you just raise your hand, please? Guy has been with Techmark, was the CEO for many years, and there's a very interesting story of his own journey in Techmark that I want to, get into a little bit. And Guy and Raj, concluded M&A on the 28th of April last year, just when the story was. We now know that the financial industry was very robust, but on 28th of April we didn't know that. So Raj, I'll go straight to you. Let's not waste time. We have lots of people. I'll start with a quote, and I'll ask for your reflections, on the quote. In 1889, and we all know this quote. There's nothing. 1889, the commissioner of the U.S. Patent Office said that we should just close the patent office down. We should downsize it because everything that had to be invented has been invented. Okay. So now the question is, has every $500 million, billion-dollar service company, which will be there, already born? Or you can still create one? You picked up a company 5 years back, which was fairly staid, is a word that I might use. And then you have turned it around. And just for everybody's this thing, it is not just 2, but in the last 2 years, there have been 8 acquisitions that Raj and team have done. So Raj, what did you find the company in? So our interest here is to understand leadership, understand companies. Pretty much all the people here own companies. So we're looking at options, we're looking to learn. So where did you find the company? And what did you do to it? Or how did you decide in the first 2 months what you were going to do in the next 5 years? And then we'll unpack what happened over the next 5 years. So Raj, over to you.
Thanks, Anjan, Raman, and Neetu, and good evening, everybody. Welcome, and excited to join this panel. So it's a great question, Anjan. I'll just take us back to, let's say, 2015. That's when I joined Orion. The company had been around for 20 plus years, right? And they were doing some amazing stuff. Kudos to the team that built the company. And when I ran across Orion, the thesis for me and the team was, we had come from large services firms and small. We'd looked at what was happening in the space. So it was almost like a confluence of events, right? There is this digital transformation going on. Things are moving so fast. And there was some fracture in the traditional way the services industry was addressing it, right? So the thesis was, hey, there has to be a new way of doing it. There is an opportunity to build a new breed of a player, if you may. And to us, what that meant is, how can you bring agility at scale, right? That was sort of the mantra. We kind of set out to say, here is the opportunity. You need the best of both worlds. The large players, they're good at what they do, but by nature can't be agile. And the smaller players, while agile, run out of gas, right? When you need to do large scale enterprise transformations, product services, etc. So how can we rapidly build that was kind of the journey we started with in 2015. And today, we are over 300 million in size. At that time, the company was 70-ish, maybe sub 70, but had a lot of good bones. The foundation was amazing, amazing clients, but we just had to step back and cull certain stuff out, strengthen certain things. So we put out an architecture, if you may, back then. It's like, this is what the firm is going to be. And we have stuck to it. Anything that we have done, be it M&A, be it organic, be it investments, we've always sort of said it has to fit that architecture. So that's, and so the answer to your question is absolutely, there's a lot of opportunity to do things better in our industry, and I think it'll continue to be there. We see it every day, by the way. We'll continue to see it better. So happy to walk through that journey. So that's really what my take is.
No, that's excellent. So when you walked in and when you see a company, and I'm just using some, so there are only 2 or 3 levers that you can pick up. There are so many levers that you can improve efficiency, you can improve customers, you can improve services, but you can only pick up 1 or 2. And from everything that I could read and find out and talking to you, you picked up M&A as a major part of the lever. And in order to do M&A, you picked up, and correct me if I'm wrong, a cultural transformation that was required for the organization. And of course, and then there is, focus, domain, and all of that comes in.
Yeah.
But if all of us talk about culture, every company talks about culture, but what is this culture? I'll come to M&A next. But what is this culture thing that is so important?
So it's actually goes back to the little bit of the history of the company. It so happened, I don't think this is any brilliant strategy or whatever. It so happened that here was a small firm doing some big stuff for big clients, right? Competing with the large boys of the industry, et cetera. So by nature, they had to be agile. That's the only way they knew how to do it. Even now, today, we are all talking about agile. When I walked into Orion, they had coined something called Ogile. Orion's agile. They already had an agile methodology. So the DNA of the firm, the culture was to punch above their weight all the time, right? Just go get it done, solve the problem, find better ways, and do it quickly. So I think that was a big deal. And second thing I picked up is the team was ready to do something bigger. So they were very open. They knew they could do a lot more. And there was a little bit of sort of that hit a ceiling given the constraints back then, the financial structure, et cetera. So there was this sort of pent up energy, right, that had to be unleashed. So I think those 2 things, and of course we had to look, everything is never 100% right and hunky-dory. One of the things we quickly did is took out things that didn't make sense very quickly, right? Did not waste time, because culture change also has to, we need to make some statements. So very quickly took out what didn't belong in this platform and focus on what.
If you could paint, so what were the 3 or 4 key decisions that you took? Actual decisions, if you're comfortable sharing.
Oh, sure.
What are the things that you did in the first 30 days or the first 3 months?
Yeah. No, look, first 30 days, some hard decisions, right? And this is interesting. All of your founders, I've been one, and you have these challenges where started with a group of people, the company keeps growing. There are certain loyalties, but with time things need to change. So very quickly I had to make some hard decisions of folks who had been with the firm for a long time, but for various reasons was neither a fit, or they didn't subscribe to this. So it was really about sort of working a way out, working that's sort of one. Within 30 days, we made some of those decisions, and I actually did that. The second thing I think that was done is I picked up people who I knew were critical, performing well, and could do bigger roles, right? And very quickly reorganized the company to reward that, to recognize that, and give them the opportunity. Along with that comes always things like, oh, we both started together in the company. Now will I work for this person? We had the same batch from this engineering school, and all of those things. So you say, look, such is life. We have to move fast. We need to make those. Second, I think, within 45 days, we had reorged the company completely.
So there is a comment that I've heard which says that large companies, are killed by politics, and the small companies die due to loyalty.
Yep.
And is that what you're referring to?
It is. And, all of us have been there, and it always happens. And that was one of the big decisions very quickly had to be made. So basically the statement to be made across the company was, look, change is coming. You either get on the bus or you don't, right?
So Suren has an interesting question. He says, how did you assess the culture? Was it, did you do a cultural assessment, or it was, you knew what it was and you sort of came in?
No, I didn't. I mean, the way actually I ran into this company was, we had sold a company we'd started, some of us, to Liquid Hub, and this PE that had invested in Orion always saw Liquid Hub as a little bit of a model, and so they had constantly kind of been reaching out. So I spent some time. To me, the culture assessment, apart from the usual stuff, talking to people, etc. One of the things I really did in the first 30 days is went and spoke to clients, right? Like said, tell me why. Tell me, what do you like about this? How come you're with a small company like this, you're doing all this cool work? Why? Why are you doing this? So I think it was talking to clients. And the other thing is just literally I would walk up to somebody's desk and say, come on into my office, let's talk for 20 minutes. And without knowing what their role is, what level, nothing. So talking to a lot of people. I think those were a couple of things.
So when you took over, what changed? You came in, was there a change in ownership, or what was the other changes when you took over?
Yeah. No, that's a great question.
So I just want to pause on this because all of us talk of transformation of companies, and the Orion case study is currently with the whole PE community. It's like a case. There's Brilliant and then there's Orion. There's the two that people keep talking about. So it's I'd love to understand what changed. It's not just the fact that you joined.
No, I think you ask a very good question. So the one is the ownership changed. It was a founder-led company. So the PE came in and acquired a majority stake in the company. But here I do want to give credit to the founder, right? One of the things I had kind of made clear that, look, if I'm coming in and want to make this change, I need to be able to make these changes, right? Can't have constraints. And all of us, again, a lot of entrepreneurs here, hard to let go, right? Hard to let go. And I must credit to the founder. He told me that he would do that, and he did it. I insisted he does it. I mean, financial structure aside, everybody did really well, but you cannot change I think that was another important one that happened literally in the first 60 days, say that's it, it's over now, let it go.
Now that brings me to a great segue of, how founders think. So Bala, I'm coming to you. So, as a founder running your own company, and Guy, I'll ask you a similar question in a second. It's very difficult to let go. And whatever it is, you're the boss. You decide what's going on, and you decided to give that up. Now when you look back, your company has actually, what was your company has grown 3 times in the last 2 years. But how did you come to the decision to say that, hey, you know what, I'm going to let go? Exactly what Raj said is so difficult.
Great, thank you. Good evening, everyone. Anjan, this is a great forum. Thanks again to you and Raman and Neetu. To your question, at some point, we let go of so many things in our lives, right? You have to be prepared for that. But having said that, we were actually looking for growth because we were a very niche company founded by 3 founders, focused on domain-based services and consulting in the life sciences area. We knew we could do well because there were many large-scale providers, but they didn't have the domain knowledge to really succeed. And we had built it over a period of time, maybe 30% growth every year. But there came a time we were losing opportunities. Clients would say, you guys are doing great, you have the subject matter knowledge, you have the expertise, but you don't have scale. You don't have presence in Europe. You don't have presence in India or Asia, right? And we were losing opportunities. And on top of that, because we were also very focused on reg tech, we actually had created a model around software as a service. And that was actually looking for more funding as well. Sorry. So that was that required more funding, and we were at a point where we had to grow, we had to scale up, we had to have global presence, and we went looking for opportunities. It so happened that I was at the TiE event, and it was a total happenstance. It was not a planned thing. I just happened to be there, and I met with Raj, and it was a great conversation we had post post the meeting in June. And there was a comfort feeling, and went back to my other co-founders. We discussed, and of course, at that time, we were looking for more funding for the product, but it so happened that there was a fit, right? So on the one hand, Raj was forming a platform company, but verticalizing at the same time. And we were looking for being a vertical company and a more horizontal platform. So it almost fit like a, Tetris kind of a model, right? And it was a good fit. We felt comfortable. And at some point, as I said, you have to move on. And it's not like we wanted to just move on. We wanted to be part of a bigger play. And I think we have the platform now to do that.
So I'm going to ask a provocative question, just for, please don't mind anybody. So this is a question to you, Guy, and to you, Raj. And I'll actually ask Sandeep to ask the question. But before Sandeep, you come in, Guy, just to introduce you, you were running your own company. You were in the company. You took over the company from the founders and became the owner. Can you just explain that story? How did that happen?
We don't have enough time for the whole
I was
story.
just going to say, how much time do you have?
I want to write a book one day, I promise you.
But just the outcome, yeah.
I'll give you a quick snapshot. I started at Techmark in 1986. I was actually a contractor. And, one of the benefits for me was to learn the business from that side, right? Really understand what is it like to be a consultant, on billing for a company, what's important from a consultant perspective. And that gave me a really good insight as to what I, as a consultant, wanted from a company. So started working for Techmark in 86. And then in 1991, I still remember the conversation. I said to this gentleman, I said, one of the guys on the project with me, I said, I'm making a pretty good hourly rate, but I kind of figured out my hourly rate times, 365 days times 8 or 40 if you want to go 24 hours. And I put a ceiling onto how much I could make. And I said, I just didn't like that, right? And he turned to me and he said, well, if you want to increase your earning potential, you need to start going into sales, and you need to start selling the service that you're offering, right? And so I then leaped into sales for Techmark. And it was a really interesting journey because, to be honest with you, they had nothing when it came to any kind of a formal sales training, sales program. CRM didn't even exist. My CRM consisted of a napkin with 5 names on it. I tell the story all the time. That was my entry point from the previous owner. And she said, well, here's 5 managers. Bell Labs is your territory. Go ahead. And I had there was no cell phone back then. There was no email. So I had a pager. And that's how I started my journey, right? And that's, for me, I learned a lot about how I believe you should run a consulting business. And I stayed in the company from 91 to 97 under the previous owner. It was an interesting relationship, to say the least. We had a variety of differences. The one thing I'll give credit is she was very motivated to grow the company. I was very good in sales. I was able to generate a significant amount of opportunity. And then, lo and behold, in 1997, I had the opportunity to take it over. That's a whole different story, but
sure, that's fine.
Safe to say I was able to take the business over, and that's when my journey started. So that's how I ended up taking the company over. Had a pretty huge debt over my head for quite a long time, but that's how the journey began. No,
fantastic. Just a comment to everybody, please feel free to, post in your questions. And if you can keep your video on, that will just, if it is convenient to you, it just makes it, nicer and more interactive. It seems as if you're sitting in a room, or otherwise it's a podcast. So the question is, Sandeep, question from you for Guy, and then I'll ask Raj to respond to that. Sandeep, go ahead.
Yeah. Hi, this is Sandeep. My question is a reflection from a conversation I had with a Goldman banker. I mean, I've run a services company and sold it. And his comment was, it's a miracle that services companies are bought or sold, because when a founder is selling a company, they're really buying a retirement plan, and the buyer is buying a hard-charging founder. So how did you guys navigate the dynamic, the motivation levels, and when you write a big check for something that's so relationship and effort driven, how did that dynamic work?
Yeah, so it's a good question, Sandeep. I was at a point in my career where I wasn't necessarily ready for that retirement, right? I still had a lot of energy. I still enjoy selling our services. I realized, taking Techmark, growing it for 25 plus years, there was only so much more I could do. I didn't have any outside capital, so I was somewhat constrained. I didn't have delivery centers throughout the world. My clients were looking for that capability, right? So now is a matter of, okay, now I got to find the right company that can appreciate the assets we have. It was critical for me to have a senior role in the company. Again, this wasn't, here's my company, thank you for the paycheck, and I'm walking away. That's not what I was looking for. I wanted to have an existing role, a major role in the company. That was very important. The second thing that was equally important for me is, my team was with me for a long time. I've got people that have literally worked with me for 29, 30 years, and a large percentage of people too. I'm not talking 5 or 6. When we brought the internal team over, I would say they have 120 internal people. 50% or more had 15 plus years. So I remain very loyal to that team. That was one of the first things that Raj and I talked about. Was I knew there'd be some synergies. There always are in any kind of an acquisition, and that's expected. But I wanted to make sure that a lot of the members that ran various organizations, our telecom group, our data analytics group, our security group, people within the sales role, people within recruiting, I wanted to make sure that they had a home. And that was extremely critical for me. And that's what's happened here, right?
So Guy, let me move to Raj. So Raj, when you made 8 acquisitions in the last 2 years, and one of the biggest things in a services acquisition is you're paying this big money, and it's a small company, the relationships are related to the founder. There's a huge risk. Of course, every founder at the point of sale will say, I want to, exactly what Guy said. But how do you ensure that? Yeah. Because one is to say what Guy you just said. Second is to say it after you have $20 million in the bank. Your motivation changes. How do you manage that? And what's your secret?
Yeah, no. Hey, Sandeep, first of all, hi, long time. I haven't seen you. How are you? So look, it's a great question, right? And just a little bit in terms of our journey on the M&A side. First of all 7 or 8, we bucket them into 2 categories. One is what I call acqui-hires. The other are acquisitions. I'll come to the deal side of things. Really, the big difference is acqui-hires, like a Bala will look at it as acqui-hire, small company, great relationship, but they can do a lot more bigger things and not get lost when they come on board and motivated, right? So that's sort of those. Then there are the acquisitions, which we'll talk about, Guy and others. All our transactions, none of them were your classic process driven. We did not go bankers and 8 bids. Each one of these is to a large extent proprietary deals. I knew the founder, or somebody knew someone, or it made a lot of strategic sense. So to us, this was not about a revenue roll-up. I think a lot of the times you get that break, Sandeep, is if you look at M&A as a revenue roll-up strategy, it starts breaking, because then you treat it that way. You think of earnouts and all of that. Our philosophy has been, and Bala and Guy will talk about it. Deal structure is one thing, which of course we structure it so that there is enough motivation for everybody to not just stay from an earnout perspective, but say, look, I can take a second bite. Here it is, I can stay, get my first bite, but if this goes well, so we have enough rollover that happens in the deal structure. So there's cash, rollover, and earnout. That's our typical deal structure. But more importantly, once the deal is done, we don't sit there and say, oh, your earnout is supposed to be tied to 12% growth, go make it happen, don't talk to me. We drop the contract, we sit down and say, what can we do to grow this account 4-fold, 3-fold? If it means us investing in the account, we don't worry at that time about deal terms. And Bala and Guy, each one of them have their top accounts. In 2 years, Guy, we've grown your top account 4 times, and Bala 3 times in 2 years. So the motivation levels of the teams and everything just charges the whole thing. So you're right. So it is very picky. It is not if you do a revenue roll-up, you have the challenge. If it is part of the strategy, And look, trust me, everybody who's come on board and stayed are going to do really well. Even bigger big checks than the first time.
So that, let me double down into the M&A part of stuff right now. So when you prepare a company for explosive growth, you said 70 million to 300 million in 5 years, which is absolutely explosive. Very few companies do that. So one is you talked of the cultural change. Second is you came down on M&A. In terms of M&A, how did you get your leadership team into it? And how did you create your corporate strategy versus your company strategy? And how did you separate the two? And I'll give a bunch of questions and just take it whichever way. Yeah. And the third thing is, I think there was a question here, is how did you finance them? In terms of, was it the same, same PE? Did you pick up more? Yeah. Would love to sort of unpack that mechanics.
Yeah, so I'll take that first. So 2015, as we set out, as I said, there was this smallish PE that had acquired a majority stake, and we set a 24-month roadmap with them. And part of that was some acquisitions. We made a couple of smaller acquisitions, et cetera, while continuing to grow the business. So at that point, it was enough proof that this thesis that we had and this platform was ready to scale, and realized that we needed a much stronger financial partner. And at that time, that particular PE who was in, they had done extremely well, right, from their investment thesis. So it kind of, we sat down and said, look, this is a great score on your board, but we know that this platform can truly explode. So let's go and find another financial partner. At that time, we brought, in fact, that was around the same TiE event. At that time, I was both selling and buying, right? Buying companies and selling our company. I was on both sides. So we brought One Equity Partners, the former JP Morgan Chase PE funds. And that from there, we really invested behind it. So we did two things. One is, of course, they wrote an equity check through the acquisition. But the other thing we did is we have very strong financial sort of metrics. Banks were very supportive. So obviously debt, we use debt as a great vehicle to finance some of these transactions. So we funded a lot of these deals on our own because of our strength, right? And we are not anywhere like crazily leveraged either. So very comfortable leverage. And again, I go back, if the business is working, all of this can be done. If your M&A is your business, then you get into that loop, right? If your business is not producing great margins, EBITDAs, you're just constantly in that loop. So I think that was one. And two, second question was leadership, et cetera. Pretty much every one of these, except for a couple where the founders were sort of had a view that after 2 to 3 years they didn't want to be part of the equation. Every one of these, all the founders, all the executives are still with the company, playing much bigger roles. We never said where did they come from. We put them in leadership roles and said, you go integrate, right? You go make this happen. So that I'm very, very proud of, that basically everybody's still on for the journey.
That's fantastic. Sri, you have a question. I'll just turn it to you in a second. But before that, Raj, One Equity Partners came in at some point in time. When you came in, there was a different partner, but the founder still had majority at that point in time?
No, founder was a significant minority. Original was a majority, but significant minority.
Okay.
OEP came in October of 2018.
Okay. So it had already transitioned when you came in for that role. So in terms of how do you figure out which type of company to acquire? And I think I absolutely agree with you. If your basic business is not working well, M&A as a way to survive a company is a really bad idea. But if it is going well, then you do that. But M&A you can use to steer the company around. So Sri, you have a question on how to steer the company around through M&A. Go ahead, Sri.
Sure. Thanks, Sanjan. Congrats again, Raj and Bala. I was at that 2018 TiE meeting, so very happy to see the quote unquote TiE marriage here. Raj, I do M&A advisory for a living. So we have advised both on sell side and buy side, to private equity backed companies also. A couple of transactions we did in the recent past was kind of selling a product company to a services organization.
Yeah.
Because the thesis was the services company wanted to pivot towards this whole fast growth product area. The multiples for SaaS, especially SaaS companies, are much different than services companies. From what I know about Orion, you're focused on services and platforms, right? And you've been a serial acquirer with all your acquisitions. So is that your strategy going forward? Is that what you want to do as a core knitting? Or do you look at adjacent areas or get into products? How do you balance that? So, and also in the COVID times, I'm very curious to know, for some of the acquisitions you've done and you plan to do, how are you integrating these companies? When it's very hard for people to get together and have all these post M&A integration meetings, and especially when culture is so important for your acquisitions.
Yeah. So on the first one, we are very clear. We are a services firm, period. We want to be damn good at that, right? We're not confused about it. Do we have products? About 10+% of our revenues come from true licensing of products. But our strategy is the following, right? Our go-to-market is all around what we call domain-based. We think as technology, we should be good, period. But our go-to-market now is, what problem do you solve, right? We have about 14, 15 problems, which are big problems identified in specific industries. And the entire company lines up behind that. Every webinar Carolina would do, anything on our website, our sales teams, our account teams, 95% of our resources go behind those 15 things. And that's how you're going to get scale, right? And growth, rapid growth. And two is, for each one of those, if you think about it, you think about it as a pyramid, right? The domain offering. Do we have IP? And IP can be accelerators, or IP can be true platform. As in Bala's case, for RegTech, we have a cloud-based offering called Realm, which Bala and team had developed, which is truly licensed SaaS-based product. But it fits what we are solving. What we are solving there is saying, for regulatory affairs, for mid-sized pharma, we bring the answer because we know how to do it. We understand regulatory affairs. We have product. We've done it for the big boys. So then IP makes sense for us. What we don't see IP is, okay, now I found a very nice new IP area. Let me just go buy that. It doesn't fit our strategy. So we don't go there. I think discipline is I think super important in your M&A strategy. Otherwise, you'll break the story. And the second thing on integration, look, a lot of lessons learned, right? And we managed to do it. We did deals through the pandemic. Guys did a thing. A couple of things I think integration starts before the deal is done. My personal belief. You got to really start. And Guy and I spent 6 months before the deal, right? The understanding, talking, and spending time. It was good. We could meet, but even on others. And then what we have done is created a sort of a three-phase model for integration. And I won't go into the details, but basically it starts with, what do you integrate first? It's always about the client. Don't disturb the client relationship. I don't care what happens, client comes first. Then go to market, et cetera, et cetera. And I'll pull Carolina in here for a quick minute, talk about how we think about branding, integration. Those are some touchy topics, right? You got to get that right. So we've learned our lesson, and I'll just give you a side quick funny story. One of the transactions we did was with a company based out of Europe, a lot of Russia presence, 1,200 plus center in Russia, in Nizhny. So all of us in our wisdom said, this culturally is going to be hard to integrate us and the PE. We should bring a consulting firm in to help me. With all due respect to consultants on this call, it backfired like crazy, right? It just didn't work.
You got the wrong consultant, right? You got the wrong consultant.
Sorry, I know. So then we had to stop that. And really, my lesson learned was the CEO has to be the chief integration officer. You can't hand it off to somebody. It doesn't work. So hopefully, Carolina, if you want to jump in for a minute, that'd be great.
So Carolina, before you go there, I'll just pass it to Andiappan Bala, who has a question which will relate to what I think, Carolina, you will respond to. Andiappan, can you just go ahead?
Yeah, good morning, good evening. Thanks for taking my question. So you have done, Raj, you've done several integrations and acquisitions, right? Obviously, you would have relied on few key metrics, we call it critical few, that gets you an early read on how each integration or transformation is progressing, so that you get an early read. It gets you an opportunity to course correct.
Yeah.
I wanted to know your insights on that. Thank you.
Yeah, sure. Anjan, if you, I know we agreed to maybe not do this, but Carolina, can you just put that one slide up?
Absolutely.
I think it's a great question, by the way.
Yep, sure. Hold on a second.
Thank you. Thank you.
And you can obviously add your comment.
Oops. Sorry.
Keep going.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This one.
Back. One more. Thanks. So this is kind of how we think about integration, and there's a lot more detail. Very strong project management office running this, and I personally get involved. So the three phases, we sit down with any entity we are bringing in and say, here is our three phases that we think about any integration, right? What goes into that phase and timeline varies based on the entity, the founders, the clients, the marketplace, culture, et cetera. But we define this upfront, and we say we're going to measure it, checklist, and Bala and others can give their experience of how this works, and be very transparent. When something is working great, it's not working. No two ways, right? And one of the things we focus heavily on is branding. And Carolina, take 10 seconds on that, please.
Yeah, sure. So we want to make sure that everyone gets under one corporate brand umbrella. And I might stop sharing here. So very early on, we start working on, how do we create a unified voice in the market externally? We want to all be part of the same family. So that usually starts with working on the press release. We think through, what are the new capabilities we've just added? What are the new geographies that we're in? And what does this really mean to our clients? We solidify that messaging. We, update our corporate story on the website, and then that goes out externally. Then we work with the incoming employees, and we roll out, like, what does our new brand stand for to them? We want to get them excited about the company they just joined. We want them to really start feeling like they're part of the family as well, and understand why they are important to the bigger corporate story. We usually onboard them with town halls. We share the corporate video. It's on our website. It's, really talks about a lot of the transformational work that we're doing in the market. And we issue them an interim logo under the corporate brand that goes something like Orion Innovation, formerly Techmark, or Orion Innovation, formerly Cabius. They use that for a period of time. We update all of their pitch decks and collateral, and also their own elevator pitch, so that we basically are all singing from the same songbook. We are all understand the messaging, and that we are one family. And then the third thing we do then is communicate that messaging to clients and prospects, and how our expanded service offering is going to impact them and what we can do for them. And that usually is business development driven. That part of it, marketing plays a support role, but we take a look at who owns relationships, what are our big bets, and we're going to market as one company. So that's where the corporate brand comes in, and getting everyone to feel like they are part of that brand and understand what the messaging is.
Just to add to that, right, a couple of things that worked for us was the very fact operationally we could get all under one email. I mean, that it seems trivial, but it's a big thing, right? Yeah. All your financials are under one system. Your CRM is one system, so it actually brought a lot of scale immediately for us, coming in. Of course, we were well structured to begin with. We had our own sales force and things like that, but it was easier to get integrated and become part of the bigger whole, right? So that was a key for us.
So let me make an observation, and would love to get your response to it, Bala and Guy. So in a M&A, it's very difficult. And I have done many M&As also, but I believe that doing the M&A is actually the easiest part of the job. Just like getting married is the easiest part of the job. Now, right after you get married, the trash piles up and the toothpaste is not kept in the right place, and all this stuff happens. How, did you think when you're driving down the highway, you're stuck in traffic, did it not bother you? And did you think, hey, I made a mistake? What happened? How do I solve this? And how did you solve it? If there is a particular story or a particular thing which will be instructive and help anybody, and Raj, would love to get your input.
I mean, I could take that. I mean, of course, there are always rooms for improvement, right? So that's a given in any particular process. But having said that, I think the open door policy of Raj and the CFO, I mean, actually, those two individuals are so approachable. We could really, if there's an issue, just go talk to them, right? And that was a big plus for us. And we all felt as a team of equals, right? And that was important, at least for me.
So what did Raj do apart from the open door policy? Because absolutely, I understand, but somehow it becomes difficult in many companies. So what did Raj do that gave you and your team a sense that it was an open door policy and you could actually go with problems and solve it?
No, simple things. I mean, even so, let's say, the hiccups in hiring or, things like that, right? Or, for example, Raj and I have worked quite a bit on reinforcing our sales team, right? So there's a lot of discussions that need to happen, issues that come up. And the fact that we can bounce off and work on things and come to an agreement was a great thing for me coming from outside, yeah.
Any reflections, Raj, on this?
I mean, if Guy, you want to go, but I guess my to answer that question, one of the things I think, again, this is learning, right? I think people when they come open door, I really think open door, just sit there and listen is not an open door. Open door should be get a decision, right? That's really true open door, because a lot of times, yeah, you can humor somebody, sit there and listen, and it doesn't, and all of us are grown up adults, right? We all know some decisions you like, some you don't. I feel, at least my learning is when somebody comes to you, you sit down and say, okay, we're going to make a decision. I may not like it. I may not like it 100%. Let's make, and I feel people at least walk away saying, okay, that's resolved. It may not be exactly what I want, resolved, move on, right? So to me, I think open door to me means make a decision.
So let me make a statement, and would love to get your response to it. Is in an open door, people have said that for a CEO, and it's clear that you're following it, and I just want to, for a CEO, the most important thing is, I'm giving a quote here: first, try to understand, then try to be understood. First, try to understand, then try to be understood. Now, Guy, I request you to respond to that. And has that played out? Does that what made things easier? I'm trying to unpack what is the secret ingredient that we talk about. Secret ingredient is not this phenomenal innovation and this fantastic. It's something very, very soft. Guy, over to you.
Yeah, so I think, Raj's style, as he indicated, it's not a dictatorship, right? He does have a true open door policy. And I think it really comes down to, the way you are as a leader, right? So the way I ran TechMark, I didn't run it as a dictatorship. I had several executives. I didn't care, quite honestly, if it was the person who handled the front desk, right? Everyone had a say in the company. One of my rules was you can come to me with any problem as long as you come to me with 5 solutions with it. And so with that said, I noticed quickly when I met with Raj that he was open to ideas. Right away I started talking to him about several things. For instance, TechMark frankly had a better applicant tracking system because we were more of a sourcing company, right? Orion more of a project-based company. And I pushed that day one with Raj. I said, we've got a very robust applicant tracking system that we've developed, 25 plus years. And I kept, pushing that agenda, and Raj, said, look, I like it. Let's go ahead and let's implement it, which we have done, right? So, he's always had that kind of an open mind, right? We recently pulled commission plans together. One of the hardest things you'll ever tackle, by the way, extremely difficult. But we did it, and we figured a way to make it work. And so I think it's his style is he will accept that kind of leadership. My style is I'm going to open my mouth, right? I know that not everything I want is going to be, the way I want it to be, but he's open to it. And I think that's what's important, right? I didn't want to walk into a dictatorship. I also didn't want to walk into an environment where, Guy, you just do it the way you want to do it. I wanted to walk into an environment where everyone has a say and we come up with the best answer. Like one of the things we're still solving now is simple thing, timesheet reporting, right? There's a couple still time reporting processes in Orion. We're working through it, right? And we're getting together as a group and we're coming up, okay, which one seems to be the best? And then we'll, as Carolina says, we'll go out, we'll, advertise to the community. We'll tell people the new system we're onboarding. We'll do it the right way. We'll test it, and that seems to be the way it's working. So
Raj,
Anjan, let me just make a comment here, which is that this interaction is so fascinating and productive. It's interesting for me personally. That I think it makes sense for us to continue. Normally, we're pretty strict on time, and we
to close it down.
and we would finish in 4 minutes, but that would not be doing justice. So at 7 o'clock, if you could give people who don't have time a few seconds to drop off, and then let's go on till 7:30 if needed, whatever time it takes. Provided Raj and the rest of the group, rest of his team, can spare the time.
Happy to do that, Raman. I think it's really very interesting.
That's good.
As well.
No, thank you so much. Thank you so much for that, Raman, because I saw the time and I said, oh my God, I need to start winding it down. I'm like just warming up right in there. What are we going to do? So with that, let's just, keep it going. I'll come back to a few things, Raj, but question to you is, what is success for you? I'm assuming, obviously becoming a $500 million, $1 billion, but I'm leaving that part as a given, as a separate issue. What is driving you personally, and hence by definition, the people that you have and will have in the future?
Yeah.
How are you defining success?
Yeah, no, look, it goes to your very first question, I think. So one is obviously the financial metrics, size, scale, the value we create for our shareholders. All of those are good things. But I think all of those will come if you get the business right? Those are going to come. That's a given, I think. To me, success personally, and I think I speak on behalf of my team as well, is all of us are saying, hey, there is a better way of doing this. We've done it for 15, 20 years, 30 years, whatever. There is just a better way. And we want the marketplace to say, here is a firm that is doing things differently in this existing industry, right? So that innovation point you brought, the new breed. And there are other players, right? With all due respect, you keep hearing names of Globant and Endeavors of the world and EPAMs and on and on. I think we can even do a little bit better than that. So we don't want to be a small anybody. That's not our goal. We don't want to be a small AB. They're all fine companies. We want to be truly a category creating company here. That's success, I think. And can it be done at scale? As you said, $500 million. And can it be done at scale? I think it can be. And the last thing is, look, we talk to clients, and and this is a little bit of my competitive side will come out now. And Guy and I do this. It's great when we walk into clients and they say, "Wow, terrific! We're going to add you to our strategic list, and I'm going to take out this, and this one." And I'm going to give you this business because you're exactly the kind of firm we need. And Guy, you should talk about the scale we've achieved with one specific client and not naming names. Top 5 of the players in the industry are there. And literally we're taking 2 of them out as we speak.
So Guy, before you answer that question, why could Techmark not do it by themselves? So Guy, I would love to get the story behind that particular
Right.
incident.
Right. But by the way, if you ask me on success, I'll tell you two things. It comes down to very simple: satisfaction with your clients, satisfaction with your employees. If you have those two, everything else is going to gel. I guarantee it. Now, in regards to why Techmark on its own, no outside capital. Right. Number one. Could I have gone out? Possibly. Right. I possibly could have gone out and sought a private equity, similar to what Orion did, a number of years ago. That maybe could have been a direction I could have tried to take. But unless I took that direction, I would have had limited ability to borrow what it would take to build what Orion had. I was in a really good position with our clients domestically. They really trusted us. We were doing a significant amount of work for the size company we were. But in order to compete today, on a global basis, you've got to have global operations. I didn't have operations in Eastern Europe, Russia, throughout India. And frankly speaking, I was tired of getting beat by those guys. I would sit there and literally, C-levels would say, I really wish I could give you this business because I trust you more, but I got no choice. I've got to go to these guys because they've got a location, offshore. And so for me, this was the best way to get there quicker, right?
Excellent.
Maybe if I was 30 years old, I'm only 35, I'm only joking. So I think for me at that age, it was like, this is the quickest way I can, jump on. And, to Raj's point, literally a month after we finally closed the deal, although again, we were working together quite well for, 6 months prior, we started to integrate the teams. And yes, we dealt with the pandemic and that was a whole nother craziness, but we literally closed a multi-5-year deal with a mid-sized insurance company that without the combination of Orion and Techmark never would have happened. We outsourced a ton of their legacy work. And what's really exciting about it is without having the capability to use our capabilities within India for our development capabilities there, using our US-based capabilities that we had from resourcing, we had taken on several projects in the past where we rebadged employees. So we had a lot of history in that. And we also leveraged our Serbia operation for their help desk support. So, I mean, literally a month and a half after it, I'll never forget the call when Raj invited me to the call with the board, which is made up of, pretty much the private equity group. And when he announced that deal, I think the board almost fell off their chairs because it's almost probably a record, 1 month into it, 5-year, multi-million-dollar deal. And it was all because of really the synergies and the cross-selling.
And as Raju said, the integration starts before the M&A. So a question that BJ, you have a question, but before I pass it on to you, Raj, exactly what Guy said. When you put two companies together, and then the real problems come out, and one of the problems that always happens, and I just want to see how any learnings from that we can all pick up, is a senior vice president in that company that you're hiring is equal to a junior guy in your company, and you just put it together. And on day one, I see Bala is smiling. It's happened. For sure. On the first day, the emails go out, the structure goes out, and the guy says, "Hey, senior vice president, that guy, and I am here." How do you manage that? And how do you manage that? And you're doing 8 acquisitions constantly. It is getting more and more complicated. But before you answer, BJ, why don't you ask your question, because then both will get combined. BJ, over to you.
Thanks, Anjan. So great story, Raj. Thanks, Guy and Bala. And thanks, Raman. So my question to you, Raj, is what kind of limiting behaviors and habits did you come across in the incoming leaders and the existing ones while you were leading the organization to the next level? What kind of unconscious behaviors, limiting practices and habits did you come across?
Yeah. No, that's a very super important thing. So first of all, Anjan, I'm still learning on your first question. It's a very complex one. I think on that one, this is where that integration starts before M&A. It becomes very important, right? And it goes both ways, by the way, even internally, because there could be, and we have several cases, by the way, where people who come from the new entity and are got bigger roles than somebody who's been here for 20 years, that whole loyalty thing. And you're going to win some, you're going to lose some. I think those are the tough decisions. If everybody realizes pace and you have to do these things because of pace. And so it's a very custom, if I may. There is no one size fit all for that particular problem.
But if I may interject here, the guy who's been working with you for the last 5 years has been your sort of, your wingman. You're telling him to take one for the team.
Well, I actually have an example, right? And again, no names required, but somebody who was running all sales for me when we were a certain size, and we reorganized to say we're going to be vertical based. So now there are 5 leaders, as an example, because each one's carrying a P&L. But that's the honest discussion you got to have, saying, yeah, that's here's the reason why we're doing it. It's just, do you want to be that 150 or do you want to?
But I'm paying the price for it.
Yeah, but end of the day, you're gonna hopefully benefit from the value creation that's happening, right? And look, you're right. Even some don't go well. Obviously, some don't go well at all. And I think lastly, if there is that excitement that you're going to be part of something, and give them enough to grow and not take away what they can contribute, right? Just because of levels, etc. But it's a very, very subjective per person, and some we get wrong, and some don't go the right way. And
so BJ's question is, when you see limiting behaviors, how do you manage it, and what behaviors in your view are limiting?
Now I'll tell you. That's why I said it's a great question. To me, the most limiting behavior, and probably the most irritating, is once we are together, the new entity coming in, the leader from the new entity, continuing to think they're still selling the company versus the deal's done. Now it's our joint problem. So lack of transparency, kind of not really focusing on we all know everything's not right. Some things do go wrong. And even simple thing, okay, first quarter of the deal, there is a slip in revenue for whatever reason, right? Or 2 accounts is an issue. All this constant positioning around it. No, it was this. Just say it. Hey, you know what? This is what happened. So how do we solve it? And it's easier to solve and move on versus that. And that actually, sort of drags everybody down, because we all know, everybody has run a business. We all know these things can happen. So to me, that's the number one limiting, is that trying to not internalize that, hey, we're together now. It's okay. It is what it is. Versus still trying to position from the deal time.
And there'd be similar compromises on the other side also. So Nipunika, you have a question on the other side. Why don't you go ahead with your question?
Hi, so this question is for Guy and maybe also Raj. When you said, when you worked on the acquisition by Orion, how did you prepare the company? Did you have any type of goals that you wanted to have this to make the acquisition more attractive? And were you targeting specific Orion, or were you open to other ideas as well?
So if I may just add to that a little bit, what do you need to do to prepare your company for a possible acquisition? Was it a conscious thing, or was it something that just happened? Guy, maybe over to you.
Right. So it was sort of ironic in a way. I had just gone through a fairly large financial restructuring of the company. After 25 years or so of having a large debt from the previous owner, I was able to put together a financial package and restructuring that probably take 5 hours to even walk through that whole thing. But we accomplished a tremendous amount in doing that. And finally, after 25 years, a significant amount of debt was completely erased. And we actually had, for once in our life, we had the freedom to now really go on and grow without really restrictive covenants on the company. And to be quite honest with you, I wasn't necessarily looking at that point in time to sell. I put the company in a position where now I actually could go ahead and look for potential suitors, because prior to that, no one would even touch us because of the arrangement. And so by going through that restructuring, it, you know, forced us to put our financials together. So we were already very organized. From a operational perspective, we ran the company very organized. The financials were very well put together. And so it was somewhat opportunistic. And I tell people you can't grow by opportunistic, but some things in life, that's just the way it happens. And when this one individual, and frankly speaking, this individual, and Raj will laugh because we both know him because he's a bit crazy. He probably called me 4 times, you got to meet Raj, you got to meet Raj. And I was like, you know, I've just gone through this restructure. Like I just got some freedom. I'm just getting, moving in this direction. And finally I said, all right, fine, and I don't know if Raj was actually, seeking us out either. I just think it was one of those things we met, and, the chemistry was there. We talked the same language. We both run companies. We understood the business. And so I had put the company in a position so that when we decided to, let's actually maybe, make it go forward. And there was, a fair amount of back and forth, to be honest, in the beginning, like anything, right? You got to kind of get the metrics comfortable. The good thing for me is I had been through this evaluation process when I restructured the debt. So I had some comfort of where it would be. We meshed on that, which was really good. And, and then, like Raj said, we went through the process for a good 6 months. And I will tell anybody that's out there looking to acquire what Orion, the process they did, I got to give them a lot of credit. I mean, they went through the normal financial due diligence, which, by the way, was freaking incredibly hard. It was because they had an outside accounting firm. They banged the heck out of us. I mean, my poor controller and head of finance, I mean, these guys worked their tails off. But I get it. You know what? You got to make sure. And I think Raj would say that everything tied to a T, right? Which was really good.
I was about to say that they spent so much of effort and they found nothing.
Well, they did. I will truly say, and I think Raj would agree with that. But look, you have to go through it. I get it, and so we went through that. But what's really interesting in this whole process is then you've got to get to a point where you've got to then obviously speak to the employees of the company. And so, you make the announcement, but now you're sort of naked, because now you've told your company. And now you're about to tell your clients, because obviously part of due diligence is they want to go to, your top 20 or so clients. And, I will commend Orion for that, because, that was a critical part of it. And so we went, and it's not easy to set up these, senior meetings, but we went on probably 20 senior meetings. And so again, think about this whole process. On the positive side, it's building credibility for the company being acquired, because the meetings were good, and I think that Raj and company got a good comfort. At the same time, though, the deal is not inked, right? So you still got a contingency of getting through those, okay? And so you're now like kind of exposed, because now you've already announced to your internal employees, you've announced to your clients, and there's a contingency there. So I will tell you, if there's any pressure, it's that period of time.
Yes.
Of course, having a pandemic that's thrown on top of it even creates more.
Oh no, you need to add this, guy, is a pandemic, and we were about to sign the deal, and one of the lenders backed out because of the pandemic.
Yeah.
Saying, we don't know where this is going to go, blah blah blah, whatever, right? But here's what I give credit to our board. Basically, they literally the discussion was, do you still believe in the deal? And the answer was, yeah, I still believe in the deal. Then let's go do it, right? I think those are some of the calls. Now, in retrospect, it seemed like we made a great call, because things are working out. Otherwise, I would have said the other way.
No, that's fantastic.
No, I would like to add one thing, Anjan. So another thing is the whole team made us, feel really professional and, part of the team, right? It's like, it's not the big guy and the small guy. But that was another piece. It was very comfortable going through the due diligence process. And fortunately, being a small company, we were totally organized, to Guy's point, right? Everything was electronic. If somebody asked for a P&L, we could produce within 10 minutes, right? So it was, I think the whole concept of treating professionally, I think that was a big win as well. Yeah.
So I'm going to ask a complex question, and maybe it's going towards you, Carolina. So, and Raj, of course. So post-acquisition, we talked of a lot of the soft things pre-acquisition, and post-acquisition, when you're putting the companies together, there is a huge amount of, culture I'll define as values, branding, people, policies, and all of that. So I think Dia has a great question, and I'll give you a couple of questions and then ask you to respond. And then Suren, I'll send it to you in a second. Is any tips for handling employee anxiety during acquisitions and post-acquisition that anxiety continues? So how do you give that sense of values and culture? And Suren, you have a question on culture also. Why don't you go ahead? And then Carolina, I'll pass it over to you, and of course, Raj. Go ahead.
Thanks, Anjan. Great session. So my question is that, do you see that in the industry, people hire external help in terms of intercultural coaching, essentially to work on the fundamentals of the mindset for the key stakeholders from both the organization? Because as Anjan said, it's not rocket science, but it's fundamental to first try to understand and be understood. And that needs a little bit of coaching to the key stakeholders, which can go a long way to make the integration of success a little faster.
Yeah. The answer is yes. I mean, coaching is absolutely important. But the only thing I would say is in this integration, it is one size doesn't fit all. In some cases that coaching may help. In other cases, I'll tell you what, look, end of the day, a lot of founders here, I mean, the reason you're founders and you're successful is because you're type A. And you're like, who the hell are you coming in trying to coach me on something, right? So in that case, you need to have a different approach. So my I think answer to that is absolutely helps, but it's not as simple as just, okay, get a coach and then you're done, right? It may not work. So you have to, whoever the two principles have to assess that of what will work and then get the help. Carolina, I'd love for you to answer, but the one thing I'll say that we'll hand it back to Carolina on the people side. Look, one of the things, Anjan, is the people thing is so important. I'll give you a live example. As I said, we acquired this firm that had a very large, does have still, one of our largest centers is in Nizhny Novgorod in Russia. It had so happened that the year before, we are the largest in that place, largest employer in the tech side. Same city, it's one of the high-tech cities there. Same city, firm acquired another company in Nizhny, India-based services firm. And as soon as they acquired, they shut down the Nizhny center and moved it to India. Good business reason, whatever. So think of this, as soon as we went in, the first thing is, oh, something's going to happen to us. Orion's going to come in here and move everything to Chennai, whatever, right? So we have to deal with it very delicately. Although we are technically a US-based firm, these are things, how do you deal with it? So there we treaded very carefully on the branding. We took a year to do the branding there. After the employees got comfortable, they knew we were not going to do all this craziness. We started putting more work in there to show them that we're committed. So I think those are the kinds of things you have to do.
And if I go by the YouTube videos from your offices in Nizhny, they are there. The employees are having a ball.
Yeah, super, unbelievable talent. I'm telling you, it's like amazing.
Like Carolina, in terms of mission values, HR integration, and the marketing out external and internal. Any experiences from your side?
I mean, with that, first of all, let me respond to quickly what Raj was saying about this company. While we treaded so carefully to rebrand that company, there was a lot of, they really, loved their name. And, eventually when we relaunched as Orion Innovation, they were the most excited to get under the Orion Innovation. So often in the very early days, like I was saying before with the press release, how we spin the story, it's usually a story of growth, more capabilities, more opportunities, and the employees are actually very excited about that. And that's what we tend to find. Some of their early nervousness around pension, like what are they doing, what's happening with their benefits and all of those questions about their own personal situation. We have HR people fielding those questions. It's not really on the marketing side, but the integration team, the HR, I mean, they're aligning. We set a tone for for, you know, what is the culture of this company that we're part of, and our mission and our vision, and all of that is part of the early communications part of our corporate story for them. So they generally get pretty comfortable about what the Orion brand stands for. And the more personal stuff is handled at a local level. You know, in almost every case, there's been the general manager of their center is someone that they were already working with. So that hasn't necessarily changed. And it's people that they trust. And, you know, those questions get fielded pretty quickly. So, yeah, I mean.
So that's very helpful, because the HR becomes a very important point. So I'll have a last question for you, Raj, and then I'll pass it to Raman, who has, I pass it over. So when you look back in the last 5 years, and I'm sorry, I'll ask you a question, what did you want to do that you have not managed?
Yeah. Look, I think ideally, so this, going back to the strategy, right? The strategy was and has been and is bring these capabilities, but more importantly, underlying that, the strategy was to each one of these firms have deep enough relationship with large clients. We were never concerned like the typical investment world about client concentration. We liked client concentration. I mean, if that was the case, we would never acquire Bala's firm. Bala's firm was 90% one client, while they had 5 great MSAs. We like that. That means they're doing something good, that this client continues to give them business. So that is part of the strategy. So now we can take that client and bring the entire platform to it and grow it, the heck out of it, for 3 times or whatever. So the one thing is, in we were putting this together, and you're never happy with everything kind of you do. I would have liked to see a faster pace of organic growth of the cross-sell. It took longer to get the cross-sell going than what I expected. Now it's in high gear, it's happening, we're growing clients. So I think if anything, and we did certain structural changes to make that happen, I feel we waited too long.
One question: did you do a double bubble of commissions for that?
So no, actually, it was not even about commission. I think we did not really, while we said, okay, common account teams, etc. What I think we did not do is go very deep in making sure it was operationalized. So there was, and you know how it happens, right? People assume certain things, but then we said, look, took a step back and no, this is exactly how it's going to work. You're going to do this, you'll get paid here. This is how the credit. So I think that clarity took a little longer than it should have in my mind.
Unbelievable. But the very fact that you are saying that cross-sell happens, I think there are many acquisitions.
Yep.
10 years later, I made an acquisition of a company, and we were meeting the big senior team and 15 people, and we had a great dinner, etc. Halfway through the dinner, one guy calls me on the side. Oh, I'm meeting them for the first time. I said, I don't even know who they are. He says, hey, listen, I'm so great to meet you. And by the way, I am not like them. And this company had been acquired by that company 6 years ago. 6 years ago. So kudos to you, that you're saying that the cross-selling is happening. So amazing, learnings. Raman, over to you. I know you have some observations, and over to you, Raman.
Well, this has been fascinating. Yeah, just extraordinary. I think, Raj, you have such a systematic approach to this, and it's so people-focused that I think that really is the key to everything you're doing. So, yes, you can have the right strategy and, be interested in scale and agility, which is a great concept. You've identified these 15 categories where you focus, and so that's terrific. But at the end of the day, there are 2 things that you've done, it seems to me, that stood out. One is, don't disturb the client, please that client. And the second one is the satisfaction of the employees. So I cannot think of a better way. That's what struck me, Anjan. And by the way, I'm very grateful to you, Anjan, because I have a healthcare background and I know nothing about IT. So, so this really works out extremely well. So thank you, Raj, Bala, Guy, Carolina, for just a fascinating session. Yeah.
Thanks,
Thanks, Raman. Yeah.
One quick comment I do want to make, while this is, as you said, it's been interesting. I must recognize that, we also have a terrific team that's making all this happen, right? The rigor, the excitement, the tenacity, and it's just, and that was also, we got luckiness. There's all, by the way, a lot of it is new team that came together in 5 years, right? Those are driving, be it integration, marketing, and so I think a lot of credit goes to that team as well, because they believe in this, right? They believe in this and they run with it.
Sure. By the way, we totally agree with that. And Neetu is going to send you a small royalty bill for having connected you to Bala.
Raman, thank you. Thanks again. This is,
Raman is playing banker again.
No, if it were not for TiE, definitely I wouldn't have met with Raj, and it was just meant to be, right? So yeah.
And I think it was any closing comment, Guy, and then maybe Raj, any closing comment?
Raman, I think you summed it up, right? It's how you treat your clients. You need to stay focused on a mission, and how you treat your employees, right? And I think that's what it comes down to. And one of the questions was asked is how do you work with the employees that come over? I think a lot has to do with the leadership that comes over, right? At the end of the day, the people at TechMark trusted me. I've always been very open with them and forthright, and I think that's important, right? As long as they see that you believe in it, which again was important for me. I wasn't interested in just turning the keys over. I wanted to go on with the mission, and that's what kept the team together. So I think that's what makes a really solid acquisition and a future.
Yeah, terrific. Yeah, just makes good sense.
I guess thank you, Anjan. Amazing, sort of hosting the panel. We interacted, but it was super questions from everybody. I think just in terms of closing comments from me, we've covered a lot. Look, I all this is great, but I think end of the day, it's about having really the pulse of the people, organization, your ear to the ground. And I've sometimes kind of not done that, and you can see it show up somewhere. But if you have that, put your finger on it right away, and always be nervous is all I can say. Things are going wrong as you're sitting here, but finding them out is important.
That's awesome. And always be paranoid, and to always be nervous. That's a wonderful comment. Actually, I'll remember that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, look, I think that's advice that Neetu heeds. She is very paranoid. She's very paranoid about how she can add value to the charter members. Certainly, the program tonight was a great value addition. But one thing Neetu plans to do is reach out to some of you. And there are 3 particular items that are of interest for her. One is to find out what you think we could do that would add value. And that's something that she's very keen to do. And the second thing she'd like to do is find out how can we stimulate business interactions between the members. And Bala and Raj provide a template for it. But I'm sure that there are more numerous ways of doing this, and she's very keen to identify what those are. So she'll be reaching out to some of you to get your input just in terms of the direction that TiE New Jersey should be going in for the future. There's one other item that she's going to touch base with you on, and that is, if you could identify one individual who you think is qualified to be a member of TiE New Jersey and from whom you could learn and with whom you would want to associate. Just one person, just one. Yeah. So she will be contacting some of you, maybe a whole host of you, to get the name of that one individual, yeah, that you think would really be of value to TiE New Jersey and for whom TiE New Jersey would be of value. Yeah. So please, think about that when she reaches out to you. And then once again, I want to thank you, Raj, and Bala, and Guy, and Carolina. Superb program, a lot of learning. Thank you so much. And thank you, Anjan.
Thanks, thanks everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good night. Good night.
Right.
Good night.